Berkeley. And when I'm dropping these, because everybody's calling me, so they're listening to the podcast and telling me to get off of it. These are just war stories, bro. By the way, when a lawyer tells you a story, they never tell you about the cases they've lost. They only tell you about the cases they've won.
Yeah, very true, very true.
So I like to go drinking with lawyers because I'm listening to them and say, wow, man, and you won that one, and you won that one, and you won that one. You never lost one? Oh, no, I don't lose cases. So that's awesome.
Hello, listeners. Today we have legendary criminal defense attorney Alvarez joining us today. I don't think that there has been a single high-profile criminal case in Hidalgo County where Alvarez has not been attached to it. And as my co-host today, I got Richard Gonzalez. How you guys doing?
What's up, guys?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
So, Al, how have you been practicing criminal law in this pandemic?
Well, it's been rough. We started off the year with two big trials. We had that Zamora Quesada case. I had one of the billers, and that was pretty big. It lasted over 30 days in federal court with good results for my client. The doctor got tagged, but his wife got acquitted. One of his associates who ran the business part of it got acquitted, and one other person who was in the case got acquitted. So we started off well. We went right after that into a trial involving 3 people who had been killed by a driver who the state alleged had taken a one Xanax pill, 19-year-old, 18 at the time. He'd have been in jail for a year and a half. We tried that, lasted 7 days. He was acquitted. So we thought, boy, this is a good way to start the year. And that finished in March 13th, and that was the end of trials. So it's been rough for someone who is in the courtroom all the time to just be behind the screen and talking about your next setting sometime in November.
Wow. And how long have you been practicing law, Al?
Well, it all depends. If you watch me on Facebook, you think I'm 45. But I've been practicing since I was 25, and that was in 1985. So, I mean, do the math. It's been a long time.
Now, Al, what was it about criminal defense that drew you to this specific area of law?
Okay, that's a real good question because I didn't start off as a criminal defense lawyer, though I did train in that. At 25, I graduated from UT in Austin, and I had a military commitment. So I went to the Army. My first job was as an administrative law officer. I worked for the officers that worked with the general on how to manage it was a division size installation, so there was a lot of people there. And that was my first job. It was a great job, worked with a lot of great people. After that, I became a trial counsel, and I was a prosecutor for 3 years. When I left the Army in December of '89, I became an employee of the State Attorney General's office, and I was heading the Consumer Protection Division, which is a civil part of the AG. As you know, the Attorney General's office is mainly a civil law firm, and it has to do with just representing agencies. But I was representing some agencies like the health department here in the Valley, and I was running a plaintiff shop for consumers. So we were handling consumer complaints, and we would be allowed to try a couple cases a year because of the caseload. We did that, but the territory covered from Corpus to Laredo to Brownsville to McAllen. So it was pretty large. So really, when I left the AG's office, I thought I was going to do civil work. And the first case I ever had was a workers' comp case under the old law. And it was a back case. And we made $90,000. So I was hooked. I was hooked. I said, that's it. I'm not going to do anything. You go from a $30,000 a year bureaucratic job, and the first case you made in the first month is $90,000. You're like, and you get 25% of that.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm going to do nothing but civil work. Well, that didn't last long because they wiped out. In 6 months after that, they changed the law. There was no more workers' comp as we knew it. Obviously, workers' comp still exists. But I started doing a lot of auto cases, but we started getting dragged into a lot of criminal defense because of the border. And back then, it was marijuana when we started. But boy, when the cocaine hit, it was really active. People were really looking for lawyers, and we just went to that. And that's how I became a criminal defense lawyer.
Wow.
Very cool.
So, and you're talking about the period of the 1980?
The go-go days.
Or
The cocaine cowboy days.
yeah, the cocaine cowboy days, right?
There we go, baby.
Al, tell us about, what was that like? What was it like practicing criminal law in the heyday of criminal law in the 80s, man? When, it gets glamorized a lot.
On movies.
And you see all these lawyers, but you lived this. So, what was your experience like in those days?
Well, you got to realize I was young, so it was a lot of fun because I got to be, I was trying cases in Chicago, fly to New York, Detroit, the Carolinas, Miami. We were all over the country, mainly through on the Eastern Seaboard. And it was a lot of fun. We made some money. The problem is that, after a while, man, you start living, the hotels start looking the same, even if they're luxury hotels, and you don't have really a sense of place because you're just living out of a suitcase in a plane and waiting for the next case to come along. So, yeah, there's a lot of, like in all the practice of law, there's a lot of upsides and a lot of downsides.
Wow. And were you ever representing someone that actually scared you? Like holy smokes, this is some scary stuff.
The only one that's ever scared me is the government, bro. That
gangster known as the IRS.
There came a time where everybody was on a Title III intercept. That means they weren't tapping your phone, but your client's phone was tapped, and you were talking to him on the phone. And of course, he wanted to talk way too much about things that should not be discussed on the phone. And so, it gets pretty hairy when that starts happening.
You've tried just a lot of cases, Al. I know me and Richard, when we were prosecutors, whenever we saw your name on a file, it scared the crap out of us because we were like, uh-oh, Al Alvarez, he works up his cases, and more dangerous than anything, you are super charismatic. So we knew that our charisma just couldn't compete with yours. So what trials have you tried that are like your top three?
Well, the first trial that I tried, it was a political case. They had indicted the entire county commissioner's court, the entire court, 4 city commissioners and the county judge, the head of the water district, and the head of the Head Start program, in one federal case, one big conspiracy case under Edgar Reese, who was then the county judge. And that was just a huge trial. We tried it with Judge Hinojosa. It deadlocked after 4 months, I think, and he sent us to Judge Kazin in Laredo. He tried it in 3 weeks. We all got acquitted. That was pretty exciting. That was pretty much one of the biggest cases I've ever had. the longest, that was the longest case I had until this Zamora Quesada case, or just recently in January. And one of the most satisfying cases just happened in March, is that Gonzalez case, not related to Richard, but the young man had been accused of taking one Xanax and killing 3 people. So he had 3 intoxication manslaughter charges, and one person was injured, and so he had intoxication assault. And of all the alleged victims, he got acquitted on all counts. Oscar Vega and I tried that case. That was a really satisfying case because we don't try all our cases. We try a lot of cases. But if there's a deal where they're offering your client a good deal, a reasonable deal, that doesn't involve prison, we don't mind taking deals. I don't mind taking deals. But in these 3 particular cases, there were no deals. And on the Gonzalez case that we tried, the offer from the district attorney himself, in a kind of mini hearing that we had in front of the judge, I asked him, well, tell the judge what your offer is on this case. 70 years.
Wow.
So it was, yeah, the max was 20, because there were second degrees, and so it was 20 for one, 20 for the second one, 20 for the third one. That's 60 plus 10 for the injury. 70 years. No. The funniest thing I ever told Roxanne, the prosecutor, I said, well, can you offer me 69 so I can at least tell my client that we're working on this case for him? And so, I looked at the judge, Judge Mancias. I said, Judge, we cannot go back to our client with 70 years. It's the max. They haven't moved. We're just going to try it and let the chips fall where they may. That was a real interesting case because the DA wound up going into where they're doing jury selection because he had been given an invitation to be on the jury. And if you know Rick Rodriguez, he's a great guy. He likes to say hello to everybody. So he was in there halfway politicking, saying hello to everybody. And when we found out, I told Oscar, we're just going to bust this panel because this guy. So we brought Rick Rod into chambers, and the judge asked, well, how many people did you talk to? He said, well, I just talked to a couple and said hello to a couple. And I said, well, that was enough to tank the pool. Mm-hmm. And the judge looked at me and said, well, what do you want to do? You want to get another jury panel? I said, you know what, Judge, man, we've been going back and forth on this case. Let's just try it. Let's just try it and see what happens. And 7 days later, boy, they acquitted him.
Did you get to talk to the jury? Did you get to talk to the jury afterwards? Do you know what was the factors that led to their acquittal?
We really, I did not talk to the jury, neither did Oscar. I can tell you what led to their acquittal. The testimony that we had read in the reports, everything that had been given to us in discovery completely turned around where they were live witnesses. In other words, the DPS officer who had not been disclosed until 5 days before trial, because this was a state case and it was all Edinburgh PD. He testified. Yeah, I pulled the lady out of the car. She was yelling, screaming. She was in pain. And I said, well, did you do any investigation? Yes, we did. What did you find out? The cars didn't have airbags. They were a salvage title. And Oscar, he said, ask him if they were dangerous. And he said, are those type of vehicles safe to drive? He says, to me, they're very dangerous to drive. So that was one factor for the jury. And no airbags, unsafe vehicles. Our guy was going 29 miles an hour. They had a black box. And the other lady who was driving the vehicle that wound up with fatalities, she was driving 35 miles an hour. And our client had taken one Xanax. He didn't have a prescription for it. But the state's own witness testified that it was a I think he said 0.066 of Xanax in his bloodstream. So I think Oscar Vega had him on cross, and he says, "Well, is there a variance in the test, like a BAC and a DWI?" And he goes, "Yeah, there's like a 10 to 15% variance." And then he testified, but it was within the therapeutic range, which means that everybody in America who takes Xanax can drive, go to work, go to church on that amount of Xanax without it affecting your ability to drive a vehicle or your physical abilities or your mental abilities. So I think it just that when the evidence came out, it just came out really against the state. They only took an hour and a half to acquit him, and there was a special charge about. I was looking at the charge the other day. Did he use the vehicle as a deadly weapon? I think they overdid that. They overcharged it. They didn't offer us anything. They forced us to try it, and when it tried, it just came out. The narrative just came out exactly the way we wanted it. We had a theme. It just flowed right into the theme, and the jury did the right thing, because once the guy said it was within the therapeutic range, and we had hired our own expert that we did not present, and then the person who had done the autopsies described what had happened as an accident in all her reports, and I said, "And you put this, it was an accident?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "And is it your testimony today that it was an accident?" "Yes." So on cross, they asked him, well, could it have been something else? He said, "Well, I looked for other things, and he didn't have any alcohol in the system." And she said, "I wasn't aware of the Xanax, but if it's within the therapeutic range, it's not a problem. And he wasn't speeding, so it was an accident." So, man, it's like they were just testifying to. We couldn't have done it better if we had taken the stand and said the guy just fell asleep. It was an accident. There were unsafe cars. There wouldn't have been any fatalities if everybody had their seatbelt on, and everybody would have had airbags. And the jury agreed. So yeah,
sometimes the case just kind of takes a weird turn, and it works out well, for the defense side, especially something like this where, I think maybe the state stacked it pretty tough against you. Obviously, you take it to trial, and then case just blows up in their face. It's just one of those things that happens. With trials, you just never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
Well, more than likely, if you hire Alvarez, it's going to be not guilty, right?
But Al, so how did you get into doing all these political? How did you become the go-to guy for politically motivated? Not so much politically motivated, but there might be some elected officials out there that high-profile cases that get themselves into a little bit of a bind. How did you become the name that became the guy to call for? If you're a high-profile individual, call Al.
Well, I have a background in politics because my dad was a county commissioner. Like you have a background in politics. My dad had run for politics in the 70s and was a county commissioner for 16 years. My brother became the mayor of a little town called Pearsall, just outside San Antonio. So I understand politics. I understand campaigns. And usually when a guy gets indicted in a political case, it's because the other side says they're winning, let's get them indicted. And so,
yeah.
I've always thought that those were really unfair cases. So I started I did that Hidalgo 8 case, what they called it, the Hidalgo 8 case, the old county commissioner. My guy was the leader of the Head Start program. And we won that one. So after that one, that parlayed into, anywhere from a constable to a JP to a city councilman. And that's how I became involved in political charges or political corruption charges, and those are actually most of them have come out pretty good. I'm involved in this Edinburgh voting case with a couple of cases, so yeah, it's just been historically. I've been doing them for a long time, so I understand them.
Wow.
And I have some training in the Hobbs Act when I was in the Army. I was a special at USA, and we used to do Hobbs Act bribery charges. So,
Wow, what
Go ahead.
branch of the Army were you in, El?
Army,
Army. Wow, were you a part of their JAG group or?
I was a JAG officer.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service, El.
Well, thank you. You're welcome.
And how long did you serve?
I was on active duty from 85 through 89. And then I was in the reserve units for 7 years after that.
Wow. And so what? Well, I want to bring up something controversial, Al. As a veteran, right? There's a lot of this kneeling stuff going on, where a lot of people are like, we don't like these NBA players kneeling. We don't like Kaepernick kneeling. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, it's a complex issue, and doesn't just involve kneeling. I mean, to me, it's not unpatriotic to kneel. This COVID and this Black Lives Matter protest has shown that there's been weaknesses in the criminal justice system. And having been involved in it for over 30 years, I can tell you that I agree that there's weaknesses. They shoot black people in the streets. Most of the people in prison are minorities or the poor. And so it came to a head. And when Kaepernick first did it, I didn't freak out about it. I said, well, I mean, he's got a right to say what he thinks. And I agree that there are too many black people. And now everybody's kneeling, and there's going to be this. We live in a transformational age right now. I think that there's going to be a lot of changes in the criminal justice system. There's going to be a lot of changes politically, demographically. In Texas, you have so many Hispanics that in 3 election cycles, which is going to be 4 and 4 years, 12 years, we're going to have the first Mexican American Democrat being the governor. And so it's going to be within my lifetime. So all these changes that you're seeing, I think they're going to be positive. And because you're going to have people involved in politics or leading the state that are younger and have backgrounds because they're people of color, you're going to have a different type of system that is more responsive to the community. I see that when I left Central Texas, boy, there were still segregated schools, segregated neighborhoods. I mean, people say it was a long time ago. I said, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that long ago. And so here, if you get 12 Mexicanos on the jury, boy, you can tell your story to them, and they're very familiar with what you're talking about. Family values, conservative values, how maybe this got, something that was just an internal family matter just got turned into a murder case or got turned into something bigger than it was. Yeah, this is the best place to try a trial. Go to Williamson County. Boy, it's stacked against you.
That's my question, Alex. So you've tried cases all over the country. Have you, as a Hispanic attorney, ever been the victim of racism in the courtroom? And you don't have to give specifics, but you've been everywhere. What is your experience with race, being a Hispanic in a non-Hispanic community in the legal system?
Okay, first of all, being a lawyer, you automatically have the key to the door. You're at the table. People respect you, admire you. It's a meritocracy in the law. If you have a good background, good pedigree, you're going to be accepted. However, I was in a little town just north of the North Carolina border in Virginia, and it was, I'm not kidding you, 80 pounds of marijuana that was shipped in a bus, a Greyhound bus, from Rio Grande. I can't remember the name of the little town in Virginia. It's a real pretty little mill town. I walked in like I do with all cases. I go to the court's chambers and look for the secretary or the coordinator and say, look, I'm checking in. I'm from out of town. I have a pro hoc vice motion. I have a local counsel. We have this case. I have a motion to suppress. And lady, very nice, very professional. She said, yes, the judge is in here. Have you spoken to the prosecutor? And I said, well, I called him, but he's not taking my call for some reason. And so she called me, and the guy walks over. I stuck up my hand and to just say hello, manners, and the guy wouldn't shake my hand. And I was saying, okay. And so I said, I'm sorry, man. I said, did I say something wrong? Did not even look at me, bro. So
Wow.
there was a deputy there, and I said, all I was going to ask him was where was the coffee, you know? So the deputy he laughed and he said, come with me, and he took me to a kitchen, and there was that little coffee club. You had to put in 50 cents to get a cup of coffee. So he said, man, I'm sorry about that. I said, no, it's okay, bro. I said, I just thought I had done something wrong. He says, no. He said, you're different. And I said, well, maybe he's never seen a Mexican before. So the whole issue in the suppression hearing was that they had taken my guy's confession in Spanish in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
And they had, so I hired, as soon as I hit town, I hired a local counsel. And then I hired the only translator in town. She was Colombian. And she was a young girl, college educated. Her parents were from Colombia, and she worked for the hospital. Anyway, so she came in, and the guy who translated the confession was married to a Central American, and that's how he knew Spanish. But he could only read Spanish. In other words, if you told him something in Spanish, he couldn't translate that, like without the aid of a dictionary or without reading something slow. Anyway, he wanted to read me the confession in English. I said, well, what did he say? And I had the translator on standby, and he goes, well, he said, let me read the confession in English. And said, no, read me the confession in Spanish. And what did he say when he said these words in English? Tell me what he said in Spanish. Well, man, he started making up words. He couldn't do it. He couldn't translate the confession that he had written in English into Spanish.
Wow.
And so the translator was saying, the judge got him out of the translator. He said, well, I want you to translate. And I said, sir, with all due respect, I said, he's not even speaking Spanish. He's making up words. I don't understand him. And so I turned around to him and said, sir, you really don't know how to speak. You're not fluent in Spanish. I told the police officers I wasn't fluent in Spanish. Man, the judge had a fit. He says, I want everybody in my chambers. Walked in there, he says, I'm granting this motion to suppress. Says, don't ever bring a case like this to me. I said, you've embarrassed yourselves. And, you know, Charlotte, I really regret not giving you a bond about a month before that for 80 pounds of marijuana. And I said, he said, so we're going to give you a bond. And I mean, we're going to dismiss your case and you can take off. So we took off. I waited for my guy. I had a rental car. I dropped him off in Houston, and I took a flight out of Houston. But the co-defendant regrettably spoke English, and he gave his confession in English. My guy gave the confession in Spanish. So that was one of the most interesting cases I've ever tried, where the language will save the day, and showed also another weakness that when you're prosecuting, you really have to be ready for Spanish speakers, because you can't say they confessed to you in Spanish and you translate it into English. You cannot translate the English into Spanish.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true.
So that was a fun case. But I mean, those things are. You think it was a long time ago? It wasn't a long time ago. We had the same situation just outside of in Beaumont. We tried a case in Beaumont. You have to press them to the brink, which, as you know, as both of y'all know, as former prosecutors and defense attorneys, that you don't get anything until there's a weakness somewhere, and once they realize there's a weakness in their case, they're more reasonable. Otherwise you go to trial. Sometimes you go to the edge and you fall off. Just remember, bro, we're going to take this to the edge. We may just fall off.
And Al, I was reading a study by the Cato Institute talking about our criminal justice system and how it has to be reformed. Because what they were saying was that our criminal justice system, the jury trial, is kind of vanishing. That most people are pleading out, that they're not trying their cases. What are your thoughts about that? How you would have someone who may be innocent or might not be charged with the right thing, but yet they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to risk it with a jury. I'm just going to plead to it.
Yeah, that's the constant struggle with me, because my position is, if a guy tells me I'm innocent, I said, look, bro, if you're innocent, I cannot plead you guilty, because one of the questions they ask you is, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? And if you're not guilty, I said, I cannot, in a good conscience and good faith, tell the judge that you're guilty. So we're just going to have to try it. And but the statistics are that at least in the federal court, I've seen the federal statistics, if the government indicts you, they have a 95 to 97% chance of winning. So, I mean, the odds are stacked against you in a federal case. But the reality is that most of the times they have all the resources to get a good case together. Trial is the only, I think, when you have a jury trial, right? Because in the state system in Texas, where you have bifurcated trials, and even if they find you guilty, you still have a shot at the punishment. And if you've never been convicted, well, you're entitled to probation. So I'm very skeptical. And, the recommendation is 20 years. I said, well, let's see what the jury does. If you have a good client and he's, you have some support from the family, and he knows people in the community, I think you're going to have a good outcome, whether it's a not guilt or even if it is a guilty, that you're going to get probation from the jury. So, yeah, I see that the system is designed, right? And the federal system is designed to plead guilty and cooperate against the co-defendants. You get big reductions, 5K reductions. You don't just get acceptance, but you get role adjustments, deadlines, as you're aware. So the system is designed for pleading guilty and cooperating in the federal side. And the state side, well, I mean, when you're a young kid and you made a mistake, a lot of times you don't want to put your family to the jury. And the problem is that in all cases, it's about money. If you try a case, it's one price. If you plead a case, it's another price. Not everybody has that structure, but it doesn't take much to go plead a guy. But just try staying in a trial for more than 3 days, they're losing money, because you can never charge enough for your time, and so it's a problem. I think it's a problem in the design of the system, but I don't know what the cure for it is. And my position is, look, you have to assume we're going to go to trial. If it works out before trial, that's even better for everybody.
I think what's crazy too now is, especially with COVID, we don't know, realistically, we don't know when the jury trial is even going to be coming back to us. You know, I mean, I think some cases are kind of experimenting with trials, but you know, Al, you try cases, we've tried cases. I feel like you certain personal element, you know, with the jury, if you're trying to do everything electronically. You know, what are your thoughts on you know, an electronic trial?
I could not do one because there's too many nuances in picking a jury. And unless you're looking at the people and their reaction, their body language, I don't think you can do it through Zoom. I mean, it's just, I would not want my client to go through trial on a screen.
Yeah,
because
no.
my whole thing is, look, humanize your client. Tell them who he really is. Tell them the whole story with the warts and all. And because that's the way life is. Life is very complex, and there's no black and white. It's usually gray. And I think juries understand that in the gray area, they can give you some latitude. And people may think this is funny. People all have different strategies of training on how to get someone to sit on a jury. But man, if I can get some older people, older females, and mothers, fathers, people who've had experiences with large families like they have here in the Valley. I mean, there's always someone who in their family or extended family has been in trouble, and they're traumatized by it. You know, the drug trade has sent a lot of people, a lot of fathers, a lot of brothers, a lot of cousins to prison. And when you go down on that, you know that there's pain there, because I remember when they'll tell you. I remember when my cousin went to jail. We were the same age, and you know, he got out 20 years later. You know, I mean, there's pain, and I think that's the type of jury you need, a juror who understands the struggle. So Zoom would not work.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that too. I don't think I could. What about you, Ef'n?
With Zoom, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think I would be able to do it like on Zoom, because I need to be looking at someone's face, like Al said, and then like you don't know like what they're looking at like on their computer.
Yeah, I mean I think there's too many factors that just, I don't know how you'd be able to account for all of them.
Like for
hopefully,
like right now, we don't know if Al is looking at porn on his computer while he's having our podcast. We don't know.
Well, for the record, yes, but you didn't have to ask that question, bro.
So Al, man, you know what? We've talked about some serious stuff. Let's talk about some fun stuff. Tell us. I mean, what are some crazy stories, man? You know what? Tell us about the wild side of practicing law for 30 years, man. I mean, you don't have to go into too many details, but you know what's some crazy stuff that's going on out there?
Well, you know, trial lawyers are by definition crazy. They're kamikazes, but the only crazy stuff that you see is that, you know, that I mean, if your practice is going well, you get obviously all the benefits of that. I've had a nice beach house. I've had a nice little ranch. You know, there are, you know, things that are rewarding on material side. But I mean, to me, the law is rewarding just in what we're doing. We're helping people, and it's corny, but we're the last resort when, I mean, the state is trying to send these guys to prison. We're the last person, you know, on the front line who's going to change that. And so, crazy stuff in the law. I've seen some crazy judges. I saw a guy with a puppet once. I saw.
I think that story's legendary. Isn't
it? So I mean, it's crazy sometimes. Well, I mean, you know, it's that, you know, like, I don't understand um, and by the way, I know there's a push now by the governor to try to appoint judges, and I said that's ridiculous. Why would we want to appoint judges? You really want a system of elections where if people are not attuned with what's going on in your community, they need to be voted out. And what I like about the Valley, it's an all Hispanic judiciary. A lot of the girls that are the females, I did say girls, who are judges right now, I would school with. Letty Lopez was a UT grad. I didn't go to school with her, but she was right behind me. Reina and I went to school together. Salinas Boys, when she was on the bench, she's a UT grad. So it's really fulfilling to see women in the law. When I came in to the practice, there were very few Hispanics and very few Hispanic women. Now it appears like we're all Hispanic and half of us are women. It wasn't like that. It really wasn't like that. And I mean, I still remember, and I never had a problem with Olfo Brand. I knew him personally, but when I first came here, the first question I asked was, why is it that we have a white mayor in a 80% Hispanic town? And it was just a question. And but we have a white mayor in and Jim Darling, but he's a progressive. But what I'm saying is that in my life, I grew up, as one lawyer told me, you grew up in the struggles. And I said, brother, it's a struggle every day. Nothing's changed. It's just, it used to be a time where people used to hide their discrimination. And since Trump, they don't have to do that anymore, you know? And so people are horrible, bro. I mean, you should watch the TV I watch. And everybody has cell phones, so I'm glad that everybody's recording everything, because you see people behaving badly. Yeah, when you say crazy things, I really don't know how to.
I mean, you didn't party like. I don't know. That's probably. This is probably going to be a conversation for a post-COVID party at Al's house. Then we could talk about some stuff off camera.
There we go. I don't want to incriminate myself too much.
There you go.
In other words, he doesn't want to get in trouble with the person he's dating right now.
A smart man.
Let me tell you, some of the cases that I've had a lot of fun in. You talk about some that are fun, because I think most of the cases are very difficult. But if you can get a municipal court case, like a Class C assault or even a traffic ticket, boy, you go in there, it takes you maybe an hour from beginning to end, and it's usually a good conclusion, and there's no downside because there's no jail. It's just a fine. Those are a lot of fun. So when you say, how do you get to the big cases? You can walk in and have a Class C, and I'll take it. You can come in with a JP case, I'll take it. If you have a case in county court, I'll take it. A federal case, I take every case there is if I think I can help you. And I mean, I know it's a time management thing. It's how much time you have. There's a lot of times you don't have much time. I mean, the law really absorbs all your time. And then everybody talks about. Let me tell you about what the regrets I've had in as a lawyer, because it's sounding way too positive. A lawyer once told me, says, "Yes, Al," and he was very wealthy. He became very wealthy. Not me, his other lawyer. And he says, "Yes, it's true that I've tried a lot of cases. Yes, it's true that I've made a lot of money." He said, "But it's come at a cost." He said, "I've lost my family. I didn't raise my kids. I'm with them. I got divorced." I mean, the law is a jealous mistress, man. It sucks you in, and before you know it, man, you're forgetting what's important in life, and it's not work. I mean, I go to work every day. Even in this COVID, I go to work every day. But that's not where we need to concentrate our efforts. It's concentrate on your family, on your community, on having some kind of internal happiness where, you can read a book or you can spend time with your parents. I mean, that's really what life is about. The work is good. It's great. I love it. But you can lose yourself in too much work, is all I'm saying. The only advice, my dad gave me two pieces of advice that one was good and one was bad. He said, you have to build on high ground, your house. And when I see the flooding in West Silico, I said, I understand what you're saying. And the other piece of advice was, hard work never killed anybody. That was the worst piece of advice he ever gave me. Hard work will kill you. And so you need to, when everybody says, find yourself a balance. There's no balance, bro. The work, when you're young, it overwhelms you. I was in a federal Zoom hearing this morning. Aaron Benyam was there working. He's in his 80s. Mm-hmm. And I go, this guy, I see him in the elevator. He's my inspiration. I see him in the elevator and I'm going, oh man, I cannot do another court case. I'm exhausted. And he'll look at me and said, let's go to work out. And I said, every morning, bro. It's like, wow, this guy. And so I say, if he can do it, I'm going to do at least another 10 years.
Very good. Very good.
And so what does the future hold for Al Alvarez? Are you ever considering running for office, or what's next?
I like the law. I'm going to stay in the law. That's all I know how to do. I told someone, I said, well, the only thing I know how to do is I became a lawyer at 25, and I said, so it was a very young age. And I said, and I was in a hurry to become a lawyer. The problem is no one told me that as soon as I became a lawyer that you'd be working every day of your life after that. And when I say every day, I mean literally every day. And I remember when I used to go to work on Saturdays and Sundays. I was at work yesterday on a Sunday, meeting with a client. I do prioritize my family more. But do I have planned? I've learned from this COVID and a lot of other tragedies that it's really hard to plan long term, bro, because you have all these great plans about how the year is going to go, and we're just going to continue the formula, and boom, COVID, and it says, well, COVID's no trials, maybe we can rest up a little bit, but then you're like my son got COVID. And it really changes your perspective about what's important and how we need to really understand what's going on around us, man. We get lost in the law. I get lost in the law. I've got lost in the law. So when you're saying what's the future for me is to reinvent myself and to stay as a lawyer, but to reinvent myself with doing other things that I used to do when I was a kid, I have this, I like history, I like architecture, there's so many things that I used to find in books and public libraries that I haven't done in years. And I have an extensive library that has nothing to do with the law. And I've been going through books, and of course, I like architecture because they have a lot of pictures. You don't have to read anything. And so it's like, you just have to change the dynamic where the law is not the end all, man. It's part of your being, yes, who you are. It defines you, but it's not the only thing that defines you. You have to give. That's why I'm glad Richard's on there as co-host. He's run for office. I mean, he's a community person. I think you should spend more time with your community, your church, your kids. the school system. I mean, we should be part of all the problems, and not just through the law, through other things, just participating, just showing up.
You know, Al, you hit on something interesting, and I think you're right. You know, as a lawyer, we have we're positioned to really do some good, not only in the courtroom, but, you know, in the community as well. And I think it's so important, and you're right, especially now in this day and age that we live in, community involvement is more important than ever, because we are going through a huge change, and, you know, we need to be a part of it, you know? And so, yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that right there.
Al, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me, bro. It was fun.
Now, I hope like sometime we can have you back on and talk about more trial stories if you're interested.
Well, you know, you only heard about the ones that I've won. You know, I've got, you know, about 100 days to tell you about all the ones that I've lost.
Al, just remember me when you're having your post-COVID party. I want to get an invite to this party.
You're the first one on the list, brother.
There you go, baby. I love it.
Yeah, Richard, you better wax.
I got to lose some weight before then.